This is WBCQ, bringing World's Last Chance Radio to you from Monticello, Maine, USA. Violent crime, political unrest, financial instability. Everything points to an impending crisis, a crisis like no other. Tune in to World's Last Chance Radio to learn how you can spiritually prepare for what lies ahead. WLC Radio, preparing a people for the Saviour's imminent return.
Yeah, another hour of Overnight America. That's one way to put it. We're going to talk to a Flat Earth podcast host a little bit later this hour. I'm very excited to bring you Dave Weiss. And he's going to be over the phone, but he will answer your questions if you had any. He said he would actually take your phone calls. I have enough curiosity that I don't know if your phone calls will be necessary, but nonetheless, it's not often we get to open up guests like this to the phone call bank. And if you've ever wanted to try to pick the brain of someone who believes the earth is flat, and I guess you may have at least some questions for him, you can even challenge him, anything you want. He'll be on a little bit later, and he's from the Flat Earth podcast, so he's done a lot of different interviews, some big podcasts too, discussing this sort of thing. He is the host of the Flat Earth podcast, Dave Weiss. Thank you so much for joining us on Overnight America.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
I'm excited to have you on. We do this every once in a while. The last time we had a guest on to talk Flat Earth was when Netflix came out with the documentary. And I can't quite remember what the documentary name was, but it got a lot of people talking about it again. Do you remember that one?
Yeah. It was called Behind the Curve, and it turned out, you got to remember, it was a movie, and it misrepresented a lot. But it was a fun movie.
Yeah, this is what I said about Behind the Curve. And it's interesting because when you talk to people that are interested in doing interviews, you ask them what their thoughts are on Flat Earth. So for someone like me that doesn't subscribe to it, you're not afraid to come on and talk about it. But even watching that documentary, I was thinking to myself, every time they showed someone from the Flat Earth side, they would play this like cartoony music and they'd make it look like it's a giant clowny thing. And I thought, well, they're not really trying to tell two sides of the story. So that's why I brought someone on to talk about it originally. And for you, from what I understand, you were convinced one way and then you switched that you started to believe that the earth was flat. I'm kind of curious your journey of what convinced you that the earth was flat.
Yeah, I'll give it to you in a nutshell. Just like everybody else, we've been indoctrinated into the ball earth before we could even speak, with Sesame Street and every movie and every, teacher had a globe. And then I was getting messages from people, hey, check out this flat earth stuff. And I wouldn't even look. But then I was forced to look. And I said, okay, I'm going to prove the globe. And I took the time and the effort, which most people won't do. And for 2 weeks, I tried to prove the globe, and I came up empty. And then I realized there's a problem with the globe. And 6 more years of research, I still haven't found a proof of the globe. I know that the earth isn't a spinning ball, and I could prove it. And the people that hate flat earth, they have a misconception of what flat earth is because they ended up at the Flat Earth Society, which is a disinformation site, which just makes it look stupid. And they don't even understand what the globe model is, because if you did, you wouldn't believe it. So,
the interesting thing about it is that you mentioned that's a disinformation site. And I think that when you say you believe the earth is flat, there's not one universal belief system where everyone subscribes to one thing. And I've noticed that some people believe some things, but not everything. Some people believe these other things. So why do you think there's so many people that believe the earth is flat, but don't have this sort of universal understanding of everything?
Well, there's so many people that are behind the globe theory that disagree on what's out there. And they're making up new stuff every day. The flat earth, there's a lot to be discovered. I'm losing my voice a little bit, sorry.
Oh, no.
There's a lot to be discovered. But, if we're on a ball, the first thing is there should be curvature. The globe formula for curvature is a simple formula. It sounds complicated. It's 8 inches per mile squared. At 3 miles, there should be a 6-foot drop, and it gets steeper and steeper from there. So a 6-foot tall person standing at the edge of water should only be able to see the water for 3 miles, and then it should drop below the curve. But the problem is the Earth is 70% water, and it's flat. We can see way too far. We can see, especially with infrared cameras and whatnot, we can see hundreds of miles for things that should be miles below the curvature, but we can see them with super zoom cameras. So that would be impossible if the Earth was curved.
Have you done some of these experiments on your own to try to prove these things, or is this a lot of just the research you came to?
No, absolutely. I've done it all. Not all, but we've done it with lasers over frozen lakes. We've done it with mirror flashes flashing the sun. We've done it with microwaves. We've done it with super zoom cameras. We have done experiments on really long cement flat floors, showing how things disappear from the bottom up due to the angular resolution limits of your eyes and cameras. And all of the, if you Google flat Earth, you're going to get an article that says 10 ways to know the Earth is not flat. And every single one of them has been systematically taken apart. Not just like, hey, that's fake. We don't say that. We show you the science. The problem is the ball model uses what's called scientism. They just say stuff. A guy in a bow tie and a lab coat says boats go over the curve. And then they show you a very deceptive video. And then we can show you that that's not the case. A boat will disappear, looks like it disappears from the bottom up, and then we zoom in, and there it is again. The entire boat's back again.
So part of the things that people disagree on, and I wonder, so if this basically you say flat Earth, are we on a disc, and are we kept in the disc by ice, or is there a dome, or what? So what keeps this encapsulated?
Okay, so the Flat Earth Society will make you think that the flat Earth is a disk floating in space, and either we're the only flat planet, or all the other planets are flat. None of that is true. We don't believe that we're a disk in space. Here's I'll sum it up as fast as I can. The Earth is the basement of the universe, for lack of a better way to describe it. We live what I call in the Antarctic basin. Antarctica is the highest land on Earth, and we live on continents within the Earth pond. All of the oceans create the Earth pond. Just like a pond is a body of water surrounded by higher land, Antarctica is that higher land, and the world of oceans create that pond. And the North Pole is in the center of the flat Earth. So and that's a magnetic north. So if you get a compass, you can circle that pole clockwise or counterclockwise, and that would be west or east. And you're following your compass. You think you're going in a straight line, but you're going in a circle around a magnetic north. Now, that doesn't prove the Earth is flat, because you can do that on a ball Earth, too. You can even go from America north, past the North Pole, keep going straight. Now you're going south, and you're in Japan. And that doesn't prove it, because you can do that on a ball also. But what you can't do on a flat Earth is go from South America over Antarctica and then pop up over in Australia, or from Johannesburg, South Africa, and pop up over in New Zealand, which you should be able to do if the Earth was a ball, but nobody has ever done it, because you can't, because the Earth is flat, it's stationary, and it doesn't move.
Okay, so Antarctica's in the middle of this disk, and it's
no. Antarctica is the shoreline around the world ocean. Think of the world as a big pond with islands in it, okay? And the shoreline is Antarctica. So if you sail away from the center in any direction away from the center of the pond is south. That's away from the northern center. And then when you get to the edge of our known world, there is a wall. It's not a wall like the Game of Thrones. There's an ice wall, an ice cliff. You just look it up online. There's videos, there's a million pictures, and no one denies it. It's a 200 high cliff, because Antarctica's land is very high. Then you get up there, It's hundreds of miles of ice, and then there's a mountain range that's supposedly higher than Everest that goes all the way around. And what's beyond there, we don't know because it's off limits. We can get into that if you want. But so you can't fall off the edge because you can't fall off the edge of a lake because you're surrounded by land or ice. So that's what Antarctica is. And then the Arctic is in the middle. Go ahead.
Yeah, when I looked at your email, and your email has a picture on it when it comes to flat Earth, and it has to do with trying to put an app on your phone. Is that what I'm looking at that would kind of give me a visualization of how to figure out the way the Earth looks?
If you just look at the UN map, that's the flat Earth map. That's a picture of, it's called the AE map. Some people say it's a projection of the globe. We say the globe is the AE map, wrapped around it. It's used for navigation. Airplanes take crazy flight routes. They make these big arcs, like to go from an airplane flies from Santiago, Chile. It goes all the way up to the United States, across the United States, and then all the way back down to Australia. But that's like, why did it go all the way into the northern hemisphere when it could have just gone over Antarctica or stayed at 55 degrees south and just cut over like a third of the distance? But then if you look at that on a flat Earth map, it's a straight line from Santiago across the United States and all the way to Australia. It's a straight line. Airplanes fly over the Earth plane in a straight and level line.
Okay. Now, the other part of this is, and some people I've heard talk about the theories, is that even if you get to the edge where there's this ice cliff and whatnot, is there something that is over everything? Is there like a dome you can't get across? Some people say there might be, like, it's almost like TVs almost. So it's like a simulated sky. There could be something like that. What do you believe is what happens if you go straight up in the sky?
Well, that's a great question, and the answer is, anything that's above where we can reach or beyond the shoreline of Antarctica is speculation. And if we believe in the heliocentric model, where we live in a high-pressure gaseous world with an atmosphere, and space is a vacuum with no atmosphere, no pressure, it should just suck all the air right off Earth, just like I can suck, water or air through a straw. With the weak vacuum of my lungs, the strong vacuum of space should be able to suck the air right off the Earth, but it doesn't. So there has to be some sort of barrier. Now, if you think about a bubble, like on the bottom, like you're boiling water, just water, a bubble stuck to the bottom of a pan of water, there's no barrier, but you have high pressure next to with water over it. There's a barrier, but what is that barrier? We don't know. Is it frozen? Is it, glass? Is it something? I think there is a barrier. If you look at the Bible talks about the firmament. Werner von Braun, the Nazi that ran NASA, his tombstone talks about the firmament over the Earth. I don't know why a NASA rocket scientist would say that. It makes a lot of sense. Amateur rocket was shot up in Arizona. It went up really fast, 73 miles, and all of a sudden it went kerplunk, like into a thicker medium. It seemed like water. We don't believe space is empty space. We believe space is some sort of liquid. That's what everything leads to. And when this rocket went kerplunk into this thicker medium, it stopped spinning, and you could see very clearly, and it turned on its side, and we could see the moon. Right? This happened in Arizona, and we could see the moon, and the moon was over Australia at that very moment, but we can see it from Arizona. Okay, there's no way, that's impossible. It only works on a flat Earth.
Okay, are you referring to Mad Dog, the one that did the air pressured rocket? Is that the one you're referring to in Arizona?
So absolutely not. I'm referring to, this was a Red Bull. I think Red Bull did it or something. Some sponsored team. The Mad Dog thing you're talking about. When you Google flat Earth, you're going to come up with Mad Mike. There's the guy that was trying to prove the Earth was flat. He wasn't. He was a daredevil taking jumps, and some flat earthers paid him to put a flat Earth sign just for publicity. And then the media goes, oh, he's trying to prove the flat Earth by jumping 1,800 feet in the air. That's ridiculous. Airplanes fly at 35,000 feet, and they don't prove the Earth is a globe. If you Google flat Earth, if you search for flat Earth, you get fed disinformation. You get fed lying videos. You get fed all the garbage. So that's why I have this app. I'm going to tell you about this app. If you really want to learn about the flat Earth, check out the Flat Earth, Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app. It's on Android and Apple. Every day it feeds you new videos. It has all of your questions answered on there. You know, it's like, well, what about boats over the curvature? What about Aristophanes and sticks and shadows? What about, what about Southern plane flights or whatever? Any question you have is answered in that app. It's the Flat Earth, Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app. And if you get that, I just say take the Flat Earth app challenge. Watch the daily video every day for 2 weeks, and then you too will lose respect of your entire family and friends because you'll be a flat earther just like me.
The flatearthpodcast.com. And Dave Weiss joins us. Do you mind holding on after the break? I want to talk to you more about some of the things you mentioned here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Here, can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. I hear you. Sorry. I think so. Our producer is screening some calls now, which is good. I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about some of the theories you may have that might not have a concrete answer, because I know there are disagreements, but when I'm listening to this, this is what I start thinking about. I think that I think that because of all these different disagreements, there's no baseline of understanding when it comes to flat Earth. And that makes it more difficult to make it a scientific approach to try to prove flat Earth theory. So is there something that is a baseline that everyone agrees on within the community? And I also ask this because it sounds like the way you talk about some of the other groups in flat Earth, you make it sound like they're not like flat Earth purists, and you might be more or less a purist when it comes to this. So it's almost like, like a religion in a sense, where some people take things very literally and some things not so literally. Some people take extreme lengths to things, some people don't. Is that what it's like in the community?
Ryan, actually, you're piling a lot of things on top of a lot of things. So there's not different sections of flat Earth. The Flat Earth Society is government-run. It's a disinformation site to make you think flat Earth is stupid, to make you think it's a disk in space, to make you think that the Earth is rising, causing the apparent gravity. None of us believe any of that. It's not even a real site. There's not even real people over there. There might be some crazy people over there, but we have nothing to do with that. The other thing is, there is so much proof. I used to say there's no proof of the flat Earth, and there's tons of proof of the globe Earth. The absolute opposite is true. We can see too far. You can't have high pressure next to no pressure without a physical barrier. Every experiment done by scientists over the last 100 years or even longer to prove the Earth is spinning and to prove it has curvature has failed and proven the opposite of what they went in with a bias to prove. They went in to prove the Earth was spinning, and they proved it wasn't spinning. Okay? Everything we observe, you have to believe that, besides the Big Bang, nothing exploded, created everything, created a space vacuum with burning suns and rocky balls, and the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. So if the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, which is what you believe, when you watch the sunset, you believe that you are falling over backwards on a spinning ball faster than the speed of sound, and that's why the sun appears to go down. While you're spinning, you're orbiting at 66,600 miles an hour around the sun, while chasing the sun at 500,000 miles an hour, while moving sideways at another 1 million or 2 million miles an hour. That's the helio-nonsensical model, okay? And all of your senses, everything you see and observe, says that you're stationary. If there's a tiny earthquake, the tiniest earthquake, you feel it, you know it. Your ears flip out, your vestibular system tells you something's wrong. But you're having all of these motions. We're dropping at 5 miles a minute or faster if the Earth was spinning. But that's not it at all. I mean, there's lakes that are glass, that are mirror reflections of the sky because we're not moving.
Do you mind taking a phone call?
Absolutely, please. I'd love it.
Okay. So Barbara is holding on. Welcome to Overnight America, Barbara.
Yes, thank you, sir. I'm a science teacher for life. I have I went to the University of Missouri and to WashU, and the space station is up there, and it shows that we are a globe, and that the Earth has gravity, and it's holding us in, and it's beautiful pictures from space. They should make a book of it. But we're spinning. We're spinning around the sun because God created the earth, and He has us spinning around the sun, and we see the sun, and then we see the moon, and basically the earth is a round ball. And Christopher Columbus, he came across on the ocean. It was a round ball, and he came across, and he discovered South America. So,
Barbara, is anything you said there scientific? Is there any science in anything you said?
Yeah, there is science, because
Can
if you look at
name the science specifically, please?
Astronauts in space, the Earth is not flat. The Earth is a ball. And if you look at all the pictures we're getting from space, from the space station, it's showing the Earth is a ball. And it's rotating around the sun, and it's rotating around the moon. And the flat idea was found out a long time ago that it wasn't right. It wasn't
Okay, Barbara,
right.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And okay, so we only have about a minute here if you want to try to give your comments back to Barbara. Go ahead. We got a minute if you want to respond.
Yeah, no problem. There's nothing scientific that she said there. She's trusting that pictures from. She's saying that there's pictures of Earth from the space station. There are no pictures of the globe Earth from the space station. If you look into it, NASA admits that they don't have any pictures of space from the space station. We have so many videos of them on the space station, quotation marks, hanging from wires, using green screens, faking everything. This is a big lie. It's really hard to accept. But the stuff that we see from up there is ridiculous. And then the other thing is Aristophanes, she's talking about, that discovered with sticks and shadows 500 years ago in Greece, that the Earth was curved. That sticks and shadows works perfectly on a flat Earth. And the truth about Aristophanes is there's no mention of him in any books until the 1980s, where he was inserted into the Rockefeller textbooks. He's a made-up story. The experiment has never been repeated. And even if it was, it doesn't matter, because on a flat Earth, you can have the sticks and shadows that come up with the same results.
Okay. And I know there's going to be people that are curious, and we have some people on the line wanting to ask you questions. But I do want to ask you one other question, and then we're going to go to, we got Mike and Robert holding on. One of the questions I do want to ask is when it comes to the basic understanding of what we would call science. So is there a different philosophy in order to make all of what you believe mesh together? Is there like a different type of science that you believe in?
Yeah, we believe in real science. The science that they use for astronomy is called pseudoscience, where they just say something, don't show you any proof. You live on a ball. They observe something and then tell you what the cause is, and then they don't do anything testable and repeatable. Like if we lived on a ball, there would be physical curvature, and there isn't any. We do the science, actual science, testable, repeatable, observable, and it shows that there is no curvature. No curvature, no ball. The Earth is 70% water, large bodies of water at rest, lay flat. There's no curvy water. Think about this. The Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. If you have an airplane that's taking off from Alaska, because it's closer to the axis of rotation on the ridiculous ball Earth, is only going at like 300 or 400 miles an hour. If it flew to Ecuador and tried to land on a runway that's north and south, that runway is moving sideways at 1,000 miles per hour. How is that plane going to land? Runways aren't moving. If they were moving at all, the plane would crash.
Well, let's take some more calls on this, because I know there's all kinds of people that have questions on it. And let's go to Mike first. Sure. Welcome to Overnight America, Mike.
Hey, first of all, this is a fun topic. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
I'm pretty simple. Don't have a big education in science. Went to high school. But here's my question. So if we took the highest point on Earth and we went up what we perceive as the highest point, and we leveled off in a plane with a level, and you just kept flying, at some point, if the Earth is round, wouldn't you fly off the Earth? You can
Absolutely. Airplanes use gyros that spin and hold rigidity in space regardless of the gravity or the force that we call gravity. And if the airplane turns sideways, the gyro stays level with the Earth, and that's how the pilot knows how much he's turned up and down. Gyros would make the airplane fly right off into space. An airplane flying at 550 miles an hour on a 24,901 mile around ball would have to nose the airplane down a mile every 2 minutes. When you're on an airplane cruising, when the pilot just starts to make that descent gently into your airport, you notice it. You even wake up if you're sleeping. If you're flying, you would be nosing down a mile every 2 minutes. That's faster than any descent into any airport, but we don't. Airplanes fly straight and level over the Earth plane. Airplane, not air globe.
So going back to what Mike mentioned there, so why can't you just fly to this edge and just keep going?
Because Antarctica is far away. You know, you can fly there. There's the Antarctic Treaty that says no one can travel south of the 60 degrees south latitude line. And without permits and everything, they don't fly any flights over Antarctica because Antarctica isn't an island at the bottom of a ball. You know, Antarctica is the land that surrounds us. So could you physically? Sure, you could. But where are you going to go? Compasses don't work down there. GPS doesn't work down there. It's dark out. I keep saying down there, out there. Where are you going to go? They're not going to let you fly there. You're going to get lost if you do go there. Maybe you'll crash into the dome. I don't know. I haven't been there.
Yeah, but it would be to prove it, though. So why wouldn't someone at least try it?
Well, people have tried, and they've been stopped by military force. Their boats have been threatened to sink. People have been arrested. And if you want to go independently explore Antarctica, it'll cost you about $200,000 in permits. You will get denied, and they keep your $200,000. Nobody can independently explore Antarctica. In 1957, they came up with the Antarctic Treaty. All of a sudden, in 1957, every country in the world agreed, signed this treaty, said we must protect the penguins, we must protect the ice. No one could drop a cigarette butt on this ice. It has to stay pristine. It's the only pristine place. This was done before environmentalism was even a word, okay? It's still in place today, and you can't even question the treaty until the year 2041. No corporation, no person can even question the treaty. But meanwhile, we can deforest the Amazon jungle and plant palm oil trees. Makes no sense.
Robert is holding on the line, too. Let's take his call. Welcome to Overnight America.
Hey, hello, gentlemen. David, greetings to you, my friend.
Greetings, Robert.
In your opinion, if supposedly from 1969 until 1972, a total of 6 times, NASA traveled to and from the moon, and they went through these things called the Van Allen radiation belts. According to the NASA trial by fire, Orion trial by fire video, which is very easily searched on YouTube, it is also on their website. We cannot send people that far into space anymore because of the deadly radiation belts that they have named the Van Allen belts. In your opinion, how is it possible that these supposed astronauts accomplished this successfully, round trips 6 times from 1969 to 72, but they are no longer able to do that? And my last question is, I would like your thoughts on 3 quotes from people. I would like to know what you think about Neil deGrasse Tyson in the 2014 South by Southwest event where he said, "From that height, that stuff is flat." I would also like to know what you feel about the astronaut Don Pettit saying, "Well, I would go back to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we lost the technology we destroyed the technology to do that, and it's a painful process to bring it back again." And lastly, I would like your opinion on the quote
from Elon Musk, where he says, "Oh, good." I was guessing.
Well, Elon Musk, that's a classic, isn't it? But the last and final one is from Robert Simon, the NASA data visualizer, Mr. Blue Marble, when he said,
It's Photoshop, but it has to be.
It has to be. And if you can comment on the aforementioned, I'd very much appreciate it. Oh, and regarding that previous woman that called, she said something very interesting. She said, God created the earth, and it does this and that, but I highly encourage her, coming from me, I am on my 3rd translation of the Bible, so no man can say, well, you know, those have been translated. The book clearly describes an enclosed, intelligently designed system, and yes, the firmament from the Hebrew word rachia, which means a strong beaten out structure. For those who are listening, if you do believe that we are not evolved orangutans, I highly encourage you to go back into the Word and read exactly what this book says. And I just want to say, David, I thank you for all you do, my friend.
Wow. Okay,
all right,
Robert,
thank you. I'll try to
call.
How much time do I have to answer? I'll keep it as quick as I can.
Go as long as you need. Go ahead.
All right, so just working backwards, Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about Felix Baumgarten, who did the Red Bull jump. He went up 138,000 feet, all right, in a balloon. He was up there for 3.5 hours, and when he jumped, think about this, the Earth is spinning 1,000 miles an hour to the east. So he went up, disconnected from the Earth is spinning to the east. He should have landed out in the ocean in the west, but he didn't. He landed east of where he took off. And he showed a picture of a big curved Earth, but it was all New Mexico. Like the entire curve of the Earth was New Mexico. And Neil pointed out, because of us flat earthers exposing that the Red Bull jump did not prove that using a fisheye lens, Neil had to make a speech, and he said, you can't see the curve of the Earth from 138,000 feet. That stuff is flat. That was his comment. The problem is every time we bust one of their lies, they move the goalpost. They just move it farther out. So now, it used to be at 70,000 feet, you can see the curve. Now it's 138,000 feet. You can't see the curve. You can't see the curve anywhere. The other thing, what was the first thing he was talking about? It was... God,
oh, boy. I don't remember the very first thing. It was about space travel. So the multiple times from 69 to 72.
The moon trips. Anybody that takes any honest look at the moon missions, you know that they're fake. Yeah, I can tie it to the Red Bull jump. The Red Bull jump went up 138,000 feet, and they could barely communicate with the guy. This was in the 2000 and something, the year 2005 or whatever it was. They could barely communicate with the guy from the ground directly below him, 138,000 feet up. They were losing comm. But in the 1960s, President Nixon on a landline phone can talk to the guys on the moon without a delay, with a perfect connection. Okay? Something is wrong here, right? If you look at any of the footage on the space station, we could see that they're hanging from wires. They're using green screens, as I said before. If you look at the moon mission, the lander, this thing is made out of, it's a tweaker shelter. It's a homeless tweaker shelter. It's made out of tinfoil, paper mache, curtain rods, and duct tape. And two guys went in there with a golf cart, with a dune buggy and golf clubs. They went on the moon. They drove around. They played golf. They came back. If you look at any of the footage, it doesn't hold up. It never held up. Then they came back and they had a press conference, and it looked like their dogs were just murdered by their posture and their attitude. They were forced to lie. I don't know what the story was, but everything about NASA is evil and fake. Nobody has ever been into space because space is misdescribed.
All right, so I have one last question for you, and we can wrap it up after this. And I think this might be the thing that a lot of people do wonder. So why teach the otherwise? Why would there be this giant conspiracy? Yeah, why would there be this giant cover-up of the truth? Right. So the answer to that is, if you believe that you are on a random speck in an infinite, godless, or distant God universe, and that an asteroid could take you at any time, that you are just a random accident coming from nothing, you give away your divine power. And then if you realize, hey, by the way, I was pretty much an atheist before I discovered that the Earth was intelligently designed. Oh my God, this Earth that we're on is intelligently designed. We are at the center of creation. We are powerful beings having an experience here with God-given free will and rights that nobody can take away from us unless we willingly give them away. So the elite are luring our souls away. Our goal here on Earth is to maintain control of our soul and not sell our soul and not lose our way. We're having a journey here in this realm that we live in, and they're convincing us that we are meaningless, that there's nothing more, and that we are powerless. But once people realize we're in this created place and that we are special and that we are powerful, then they can't affect you. There's no power anyone has over you. People call them the elite. When I say the elite, well, it's not the elite. It's the, I don't want to say a bad word, but the horrible, nasty people that
are claiming authority over you, and they don't have authority over you. If you're lost in space, you are powerless and helpless, okay? But if you know who you are, where you are, what you are, you take your power back, and they can't have that. They need our fear and our willingness to submit to their authority. That's why. It's the most important secret. One more thing I want to say is we have not known the earth is flat for 500 years. That's a lie. I interviewed a woman in January, 102 years old. She remembered her 5th birthday party. I was interviewing her about the World's Fairs, and I asked her, what did they teach you in science? Because she knew her teacher's names and everything. And what did they teach you in science in elementary school? And she said, they taught me the earth was flat. In the 1920s, all across America, everyone was being taught the earth was flat. We found a woman in Croatia in the 1930s. She said all of Croatia knew the earth was flat. Everyone knew the earth was flat until the early 1900s when this cabal or whatever changed history. They started all these wars. They're destroying all of the evidence. There's so much evidence of flat earth. It's unbelievable. It stacks up. And it all believe anything I say. I just pointed to some doors. I told you some things that, like, hey, there's another explanation why ships go over the horizon. There's another explanation why shadows are different in different places on the earth. There's another explanation of what's going on above our heads. Those lights we see in the sky, there's another explanation for what they are.
Is the earth flat? There is a growing movement, not just in this country, but around the world, that believes that it is. We're going to talk with David Weiss, host of the Flat Earth podcast, one of the most popular podcasts on this subject, when we come back. This is The Other Side. Well, a question that has been debated for literally millennia is the shape of the earth. What sort of a shape is it? Well, what we've seen in the last few years is an incredible momentum building behind a movement, I guess you'd call it a movement, of people that believe the earth is flat. Why has this movement taken hold? Well, we have one of the most popular flat earth podcasters on the line with us right now, David Weiss. He's the host of the Flat Earth podcast. Hopefully he can give us some answers. David, good morning. Thanks for joining me on the radio this morning.
Good morning, Frank. Glad to be here. Excited about this conversation.
Me too. So let's start from the beginning. Why do you think the earth is flat rather than spherical like we were taught in 4th grade?
I grew up like everybody else, and I believed what everyone believes, that the earth is a spinning ball flying through an infinite vacuum. But then one day, not just one day, people started sending me, messages. Hey, have you looked into flat Earth? And like any smart person, I would delete those messages and ban them from our social media because for being so dumb, basically, to even suggest such a thing. But then I was forced, kicking and screaming, to look into it, and I went in with a biased attitude to prove it wrong and to prove the globe right. And for 2 weeks, I tried every ball Earth proof I thought I had. When I actually looked at it and applied actual science and not scientism to it, realized that it was nonsense. And then flash forward 6 years later, here I am talking to you. I'm a host of the Flat Earth podcast, creator of the Flat Earth Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app, and trying to spread this message around the world.
Well, so what led you to believe, based on the science that you studied and your own observations, that the earth was flat rather than a spinning ball?
So the first thing is we've all been programmed to think that flat earth is something that it's not. Flat earth is not a flat pancake flying in space with other flat planets or even round planets. It's nothing like that at all. There's no edge to the flat earth. Well, how could that be if it's flat? Whereas, what's on the other side, what's on the edge? So the way I like to describe it is, you know what a puddle is? A puddle is where water accumulates at the low spot in the land, and the edge of the puddle is where the water's just higher, the land's just higher than the water, right? Expand that out to a pond, bigger, to a lake. Same thing. The edge of the lake is where the land is higher. Well, now think of the whole world as a giant lake. And the land that surrounds us is higher than the level of the ocean. And that land we call Antarctica. Antarctica is the highest land on Earth. It is the edge of the world ocean. So if you sail to the edge of the ocean, you're not going to fall off because you're not at the edge of a pancake. You're at the edge of a lake. And Antarctica, the surface of Antarctica is like 200 feet higher than the water. So you get up there, and then it goes on and on and on. We don't know how far it goes because it's off limits to everybody. The Antarctic Treaty doesn't allow anybody to go there. So that was the first thing that got me. I'm like, why is that off limits? And it's off limits until the year 2041, and nobody can even question the treaty until then.
So the thing that keeps people from sailing off the edge of the earth is the fact that Antarctica, being elevated so high above sea level, provides sort of an not artificial, but a barrier that keeps people from sailing off the edge of the earth.
Well, can you sail off the edge of a lake? It's kind of a misnomer where if you sail to the edge of a lake, you don't fall off the lake. You're at the edge of the lake. That's where the land starts. Well, that's what Antarctica is. Antarctica is the land at the edge of our oceans. It's higher than our oceans, so it contains our oceans. So you got to think of the world as a much, much, much bigger place. Antarctica is most likely bigger than all of the oceans and all of the countries combined. It's not a little continent at the bottom of a ball. It's the land that surrounds our world oceans, and it's off limits to everybody. Now, people say, well, you can go there on vacation. You can go tour. There's 15 different companies that you can go for $10,000 to $30,000 just for a couple of days. But those 15 companies are all run by the same guy, so it's only one company. So that was suspicious in itself. But then when you go there, they only take you to a little peninsula. They show you some icebergs and some penguins, and then they bring you to the ceremonial South Pole, and they tell you it's the South Pole, but there's no way to verify it because compasses don't work and GPS doesn't work. And they even tell you it's a ceremonial South Pole, so it's not even a South Pole.
So you believe that, and we're talking with David Weiss from the Flat Earth podcast, you believe that if we had, say, unfettered access to Antarctica, not prohibited from exploration by this treaty, that there would be proof that people could observe for themselves that the Earth is indeed flat?
I believe that the people that are running our world, our leaders, as we call them, when they got, planes that were good enough to explore Antarctica in the, maybe late 40s, early 50s, into the 1950s, they went to Antarctica. And then Admiral Byrd, he did his, the first flight out over Antarctica. And he came back and went on television and said he discovered land bigger than America, filled with resources that no human has ever stepped foot on. And, bigger than America, that's bigger than they're showing us Antarctica is. But then right after he made that speech, he never spoke again, and they started the Antarctic Treaty. All the countries in the world got together, right? They all got together and agreed that we must protect Antarctica. We must protect the penguins and the ice. No one can drop a cigarette butt on this pristine ice. And also it's military, we have to, because our enemies could sneak under the planet and come up and attack us. So those are the two reasons the Antarctic Treaty went into effect, and it goes all the way to the year 2041. And don't think that when we get to 2041, they're just going to open it up. They're going to kick it down the road another 60 years.
So what shape is the Earth if it's flat? Is it a circular disc? Is it more like something with four corners, as the Bible might suggest, or is it some other shape?
Well, first, it's not about the shape, but we'll talk about that in a second. It's about the lie, and the lie is when you say why would they lie, the lie is the reason. It's all about control. But let's talk about the shape a little bit. The best way I can describe it is the Earth system, the Earth that we live on, is the basement of the universe. I have no better words to describe it. It's just the foundation of the universe. And we live in this melted puddle that our sun has melted. Our close, small sun has circles around and has melted out these oceans and land masses. So that's where we live. And people say, well, what's on the other side? Well, the deepest hole ever dug flat Earth or globe Earth, doesn't matter. The deepest hole ever dug is in Russia. It's a Great Borehole or the Great Borehole, something like that. And it's just short of 8 miles, like 7.5 miles, where they couldn't dig any farther. It was too hot, too hard. They hit like an impenetrable barrier, and they couldn't get through it. And so that, if you want to put that in scale, that's like you have an apple and you're drilling halfway through the skin of the apple. But the funny thing is, while they were drilling that hole, they were using ground-penetrating radar to see what they were going to hit next, and they were wrong every step of the way. They're like, all right, no more rocks. They hit rocks. Oh, no more water. Then they hit water. So they went halfway through the skin of an apple. They were wrong every step of the way. They hit an impenetrable barrier. They can't get any deeper, but somehow they know what's in the center of the earth. To me, that's pseudoscience.
Pretty interesting. How do you explain the images that we've seen from space? Are the astronauts that have seen a spherical Earth, are they in on the big lie?
Yeah, Frank. See, this is the part that gets a lot of people because I'm in my late 50s, and I was a kid when the moon landings happened, and these guys are our heroes. But there's a serious problem with NASA and all space agencies. NASA never even uses the word photo. They will never refer to a photo of the Earth. They only call it images and pictures because they don't want to lie directly to us and say that it's a photo. They admit that all of the images of Earth are put together with strips of data from lower altitude flights taking those pictures. They claim it's from satellites or the space station, but that's not true. They're just from high altitude planes and stripped together, and some of them are literally just paintings. There's only 2 photos that NASA has of Earth or images, the 2012 and the Blue Marble. I forget what that one was, a bunch of years later. But if you look at them, it makes no sense. The size of the U.S. is twice the size on one than the other. The proportions aren't right. The Earth is either very tiny or doesn't have as many continents. It's once you look at them, you realize that they're not photographs. They're literally pieces of art.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. In terms of the, do you think that other planets, Mars, Jupiter, Pluto, do you think those are round, or are those bodies also flat?
So here's what we have to kind of get away from is the solar system. The solar system doesn't exist. I call it the soul lure system. Basically, it's a way to steal your soul away. We're going to get into that in a little bit. But other planets, now I can look up. I have access to telescopes and stuff, and I could look up and see Saturn and Jupiter and the alignment we had. There are these things in the sky, but the only thing that we can say truthfully about them is that they're lights. We don't know how big they are. We don't know how small they are. We don't know anything. If you look at Mars or Saturn, you can see it with your naked eye, but it's brighter than any star. You have to believe that the sunlight is reflecting off of that dusty, dirty ball and reflecting back to Earth brighter than any star. It looks like a little piece of the sun sometimes. It's so bright. And science, actual science, the inverse square law of light will teach us that there's no way it could be that bright. So those things that we're seeing are their own lights. They used to be called wandering stars, and now all of a sudden they were named planets.
Why, David, would any government, or let alone all the governments, want people to believe that the Earth was round when it's actually flat? What do they gain by lying to the public about that?
Yeah, so it's all about controlling our minds. Now, you would have to, be under the mindset that maybe the government isn't out for our best. Maybe there's some people in the government that aren't out for, the best of the population, and they would want a way to control the people. So if you can convince people that they live on a speck in an infinite universe, spinning out of control, where an asteroid could take them out at any moment, and we're going to run out of dinosaur juice for our cars. And we evolved from a random accident, from a lightning strike that turned into an amoeba, that turned into a fish, that grew legs, that turned into a monkey, that turned into a human, that we are meaningless in the middle of a godless or distant God universe. That's one way, and we're on this prison planet where there's nothing else to discover, versus the reality of our world is that we are on an intelligently designed system where we are at the center of creation, that we are powerful spiritual beings having a physical experience here on this earth realm where nobody has dominion over us. Nobody can take away our God-given free will, and, that our thoughts create our reality. And the analogy I use, the documentary with Keanu Reeves called The Matrix?
Sure.
So at the beginning of that, Neo is he's very he's depressed. He's sleeping a lot. Something's wrong with the world. He can't figure it out. And that's because his conscious mind is separated from his soul's journey. And his soul, maybe you can look at your soul as like a piece of God or a piece of creation. And your soul is here, knows what it wants to do, but his mind was separated and he's trying to figure it out. Then if you look at him at the end of the movie, when he discovers who he is, where he is, what he is, and the power of his mind, he takes his power back and the system has lost control over him. If everybody knew that the earth was flat, the system would lose control of the people because they would take their power back.
We're talking with David Weiss. He's host of the Flat Earth Podcast, 1-800-848-WABC if you have a question. Sam is in New Jersey. Sam, you're on with David Weiss.
Hi, how are you, Frankie? And how are you, David? I'm happy, David, you're not one of these evolutionist, anti-God people, and you sound like an awesome, smart individual. My question is I think from my little perspective, people, both private industry people and public, forget NASA for a second, they're all retarded people, but they have took their private planes and all and flown east, for example, and they kept at it. They kept going east, and they came back to square A, to square one where they started. How do we explain that?
All right, perfect. So remember, we're on the Earth pond. It's a big circular pond with a bunch of islands. We'll call them continents. And at the center of the pond is the North Pole. Just imagine there's a big magnetic mountain there, and it's the North Pole. All compasses will point towards the center of the lake. So now let's say we're in New York. We're departing 77 WABC, and we get on our boat, and we dead reckon east. So we got our compass. We're on our boat. We hit go, and we just follow that compass needle east. Well, the needle has to always point towards the center, so east will take us in a circle equidistant from the center, and we'll end up at California and back in New York. We'll think we went around a globe because of programming, but in reality, we just went around the neighborhood, around the lake. We went in a circle. East and west are circles, but guess what? That doesn't prove the earth is flat because that's the same on a ball, right? If you're on a ball 1 mile from the North Pole and you wanted to go east, you got to point towards the North Pole the whole time with that needle. 3.14 miles later, you're back to where you started from and you circumnavigated and you didn't change your heading. East and west are circles. You can also go from the United States, you could head north, and you head north, and as soon as you pass the North Pole, you're heading south, even though you haven't changed directions, and all of a sudden you're in Japan or in Indonesia. Okay? That doesn't prove the earth is a globe flat either, because you can do that on a globe. What you cannot do on a flat earth is go from the tip of South America, Santiago, head south, go over Antarctica, and pop up over in Australia, which should be a fairly short flight. Nobody's ever done it. It's never been done.
Let me ask you, David, why do you think we've had such an explosion in the flat earth movement over these last couple of years? What's caused this growth?
Yeah, so I'll talk about that. And you made a comment at the beginning, that we've known for years, and it's just only recently. That's not true. All of our history is a lie. So what has caused it? Well, there's always been flat earthers. I interviewed a woman in February of 2020, who was 102 years old. I was down in Florida. I was visiting my mom at where she lived, and I met this woman, and she's 102. She had her wits about her, and I was interviewing her about the World's Fairs because she had been to the World's Fair in New York, and she lived in Connecticut. And she had such a great memory. She was telling me about her 5th birthday party and who was there. And I asked her what the name of her elementary school was. She knew the teacher, the class, some of the kids in the class, the street it was on, which is better than I could do. And I said to her, what, and I'd never mentioned this to her. And I said, what did they teach you in science about the earth when you were in elementary school? And she looked at me and she goes, they taught me the earth was flat, but then later on they changed it to a ball. And I asked her if she believed it. She said, yes, I did, because, they told me. And then I told her the whole story about what's going on, and she started crying. It was an amazing story. And I videoed the whole thing. I have it on my YouTube channel. But then we found out another woman from Croatia who said in the 1930s, every school was teaching flat earth. So then we started looking on microfilm and old newspapers, and we found article after article about teachers that were being persecuted in the 1920s here in the U.S. and in Europe for trying to teach heliocentrism in the classrooms, right? So this entire hijacking of our reality happened less than 100 years ago, right? Every civilization before us knew the earth was flat.
I was on a radio show yesterday afternoon promoting your appearance today, and a few different people brought me criticisms of the flat earth movement in general. One person said that there is vicious anti-Semitism within the flat earth movement. And another person said that one flat earther recently destroyed 500 COVID vaccines. Do you want to respond to either of those, David?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So there is so much controlled opposition keeping this secret. If you Google Flat Earth, you end up at the Flat Earth Society, which is all nonsense. All the images that you see of Flat Earth online are from the Flat Earth Society, and no one believes any of that. That is just to gatekeep your mind. The other thing is they start putting, disinfo agents, agitators, like Antifa, into the movement, and they try to do all these things. So let's address the article about the pharmacist. That guy, the Flat Earth community is pretty tightly knit. Well, we saw that article. It came out today about the pharmacist that got rid of some vaccines. So they're putting anti-vaxxers. They're connecting it with Flat Earth. And he said, so first, nobody has ever seen this guy in any chats and any comments, and he doesn't have a YouTube channel. He has nothing. So a flat earther that has a name that sounds a lot like Heisenberg and looks a lot like Heisenberg from Breaking Bad, that's just a coincidence, I'm sure, came up, and he's a flat earther that says the government put a dome over the sky so we can't see God. No flat earther has ever even thought of that concept, okay? So it's a totally made-up story. And then addressing the other part about anti-Semitism, well, everybody loves me, and I'm Jewish, so I don't know where that's coming from. Other than Eric Dubé, who's one of the early flat earthers, he has some questions about the Holocaust, and he put out some videos. Now, he's not an anti-Semite. He had questions about the Holocaust. Well, the media took that and connected them together and said flat earthers are anti-Semites. The other thing the media put out there is crazy flat earther kills himself trying to prove the earth is flat in a homemade rocket. Well, Mad Mike Hughes, the guy was a flat earther. He was smart enough to know the earth was flat, but he was an Evel Knievel stuntman who wanted to get the world record for a steam-powered rocket jump. He was going to jump like 1,800 feet. There's buildings in New York that are way taller than that. So he wasn't doing it to prove the earth was flat, but he needed money for some new steam compressors. And this was going to be a big televised event. So he was trying to raise money. So some flat earthers said, hey, we'll raise the money for you if we can put a billboard on your rocket that says research flat earth.
I see.
So the media took that and said, oh, this guy tried to prove the earth was flat in his little steam-powered rocket and killed himself.
David,
again, another media story.
I have to pause, but it's a fascinating subject and a fascinating conversation, and I'm wondering if we can pick a day within the next week or two to continue the discussion.
100%.
Thank you.
have been listening to WLC Radio. Join us again tomorrow for another truth-filled message on WBCQ at 9330 kHz on the 31 meter band. World's Last Chance Radio, preparing a people for the Saviour's soon return.